Welcome back to Vaulted by Proof. This is a show about collecting and creating digital art. On this week's episode, we talked to Erick Calderon, of course, Snowfro, founder of Douglxss.
We're super excited about it. It's going to be our fourth year to do it. Still kind of shocked at how many people are traveling from all over the world to come to like a little town in West Texas.
And Alejandro Cartagena, one of the co-founders of Fellowship.
The past is AI because you can't escape that it comes from other stories, other images that already existed.
These are two of the foremost builders and founders in our space, really with outsized impact on everything happening.
I look back and I think about how many people's lives have been changed for the better.
They're also patrons and stewards and great collectors. And so we go, as we always do, into their two vaults.
Sometimes I connect with an artist and I just go for it. And this is the case for Littlecakes.
Two very special pieces. Appreciate you tuning in. And as always, let's jump in. Welcome to Vaulted by Proof. I'm Eli Scheinman, Director of Art at Proof and Larva Labs. We have an amazing show today. We have two of the founders in this space who are really leading the way. They've inspired me deeply in my own work at Proof and with Grails. First up, we have the one, the only, Erick Calderon, Snowfro, founder of Douglxss, the Chromie Squiggle. Welcome, Erick. Great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me, Eli. I'm happy to be here.
This is going to be a lot of fun. And then we also have Alejandro from Fellowship, one of the co-founders over there, a long-term artist, writer, and really doing amazing work with photography and AI art. Welcome, Alejandro. Really excited.
Thank you, Eli. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so first I want to come to you, Erick, for a moment. Marfa is upcoming, lots of things cooking on the Douglxss side. And then I know you also have something that you want to share in terms of recently collected that has some relationship, I think, to Marfa. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, Marfa's coming up. It'll be our fourth year. Still kind of shocked at how many people are traveling from all over the world to come to like a little town in West Texas. But to me, it's one of the most meaningful things in my journey, at least with Douglxss. And I know that a lot of our collectors and artists share that joy. And I'm just really proud to have been able to be able to host something like this. It's just really special. No idea how many people are going to come this year. We've got a lot of RSVPs looking like it'll be as big as last year, but it's a tough market out there, right? So it's not easy to get to.
What did you have last year, Erick? How many?
We had 800 RSVPs, and we had somewhere between like 700, roughly 700 people show up.
It's amazing. Like, given how hard it is to get there in that filter that provides, it's incredible.
Man. And people from Hong Kong and Thailand and Australia. I mean, it's really, it's humbling, honestly. And I think it's a testament to kind of what our desire to kind of share space with like-minded individuals. And, obviously generative art is a big theme there, but I think just in general, the discovery of art by a group of people that I think may have not been interested in art and kind of finding that they care and that they want to support artists' careers, I think is pretty special.
I love it. And then Erick, you have a piece that you wanted to share that has some relationship, as I mentioned, to Marfa. What do you have?
Yeah, so there's this piece, artist named Douglxss, that we met last year in Marfa. Actually, he's a truck driver, and he was just driving through, and he heard about this event, and I guess he pulled off the side of the road and just kind of met with us. He was just a community member at that point. We got to know him. He spent a couple days, came to some of the events, and he's an artist. And so we got to know him. He's done a lot of these paintings, just as he's a trucker, as he's kind of like cross country, doing his thing. And this one in particular, I had a chance to collect last week. This is the view that you see directly across the street from the Douglxss house. This is actually the building across the street. There's always a tractor there, and there's always a dude there kind of like working on some metal fabrication thing. And so it was really meaningful to get to collect his work, also to just be in touch with, the randomness and the things that had to fall into place for us to even have met. And now seeing his success kind of on the internet per se, I think someone that may not have expected to even have had a following in the way that it's kind of come together. And it all started just because he happened to stop on his way across the country, stop in Marfa and say hello. It's very meaningful for me to have met him and really meaningful to get to own this piece.
That's amazing. I hope he'll be there this year. I mean, maybe it's hard for him to coordinate that given but I'd love to meet him in person. What a great story. And I know our mutual friend, Derek Edwards, of course, also a big fan of Douglxss. I think that's where I may have seen his work first. Alejandro, so much going on over at Fellowship. I know you have a larger, I think, solo release with Mowgly Lee coming up. Talk to us, what's top of mind for you at Fellowship? And then I know you also have a work you want to share.
Sure. We're releasing Mowgly Lee's second collection. Mowgly is an artist from Los Angeles. He's been in film and music production for quite a while. Very philosophical kid in his 20s, touching some deep subjects. We just had a space with him earlier today. I connect with people who talk about things that I'm excited about, like the city and urban planning and ideas about identity. And he does that like in a very, very sophisticated way. So we're working on that. And we're right now, our biggest event coming up is in Perry Photo. We're presenting there. It's our third year as Fellowship, presenting at that big fair. And excitement around that right now.
You guys have at Fellowship done such a wonderful job showing up in those venues, Alejandro. You were in Mexico, I believe,
yes.
and showed up, and just doing so with a combination of physicals and digital work. And I think really, of anyone in this space, well, really you too, and your companies more than anyone perhaps, but specifically Fellowship, doing such good work to introduce these works, these pieces, these artists to a brand new collector base, which, I mean, we could riff on that probably for the entirety of the show, that challenge. I know, Eric, you're thinking deeply about that always. Alejandro, though, I know you wanted to share one piece from Fellowship. It's from an artist I've been following as well. Show us this piece.
Sure. So the piece that I recently collected, let me show you here. Share screen. Sorry.
And Alejandro, how much do you collect yourself from Fellowship?
I have, let's say, I have my moments. Sometimes I'm heavily collecting because I have a little bit of money, and sometimes I'm just looking and wishing the best for the artist. I've been asked, like, what is my thesis on collecting? Honestly, in the NFT space and in my previously in my traditional art collecting, it's more about supporting artists. I don't think I've ever really been good at selling stuff that I buy. So I keep everything that I'm collecting. Sometimes I connect with an artist and I just go for it. And this is the case for Littlecakes. She's an artist, half Japanese, half American. And I remember just scrolling through Twitter and hitting on a collection that she had done. And I don't know, something really caught fire in my soul when I saw the work. And it was after I actually talked to her, I really found why we were connecting. And it's because she's bicultural. I'm half Dominican, half Mexican. She's again, half Japanese, half American. And her work is all about that duality of being bicultural. And she mixes horror with beauty, uncertainty with certainty. She's talking about, past stories, past histories. And for me, one of the best mediums to use to talk about the past is AI, because AI, you can't escape that it comes from other stories, other images that already existed. And so to use AI to tell a story about this bicultural and this in-between images that she's always thinking about, it's the perfect match. And that's, that was why I collected this piece. It was her Genesis piece on Fellowship.
Beautiful. I was not aware of her prior to this moment and you sharing her work. Really interesting piece. And I'll go back and dig in. Does she have other works on Fellowship beyond that one that you just shared?
Yeah. She's released. She works fairly slow. I think she's released maybe 7 pieces. There's one coming up at the end of the week. She takes her time. She's really thoughtful. She's actually kind of a legend in the contemporary art world. She used to have a gallery in New York in her apartment. And I actually, when I approached her, I told one of the fellowship artists and they told me, dude, she's a legend. You should definitely work with her. And that definitely, I mean, I was already convinced, but that pushed me even more to have her be part of the program.
I love it. So, I mean, I said this off the top of the show. You two have really inspired me deeply and really helped shape the space that we're in. And I'm going to probably use the word "the space" throughout this show. It's probably the best way to describe the work you both are doing in a kind of broad way. Erick, I want to come over to you. And if we look back for a moment, I mean, you've been at the epicenter of the last 4 years in the digital art, generative art, of course, movement. How has that felt? What has that responsibility felt like for you, going through these cycles, leading art blocks? I know that's a big question that's probably best for a Marfa campfire or something, but sort of, what comes to mind for you when I ask that question?
I think maybe what comes to mind immediately is that it's been some of the highest highs I've ever experienced. And if not, I mean, it's, some of the highest moments of my entire life and also some of the lowest moments of my entire life. And where I think that there's this, this all started for me with like the CryptoPunks and the ability to prove ownership of something digital. And from then forward, we learn. And we learn every day, and we learn every cycle, and we learn every new technology, and every just the sentiment changes. But basically, we've gone from like this time of kind of plausible deniability of what to expect. Like I don't think Matt and John knew what to expect when they released the CryptoPunks, and I had no idea how much this was going to change my life, and for good, and for some rough patches as well. But, to having this like history to learn from previous founders, previous artists. And I think artists, collectors, and founders all now have at least a bit of a reference of what it takes to be a part of this ecosystem. And I am learning every single day and trying to figure out and balance, the various different stakeholders that are part of this ecosystem in the best possible way, with most importantly, being able to have the longevity to be around in the future. And that, means that could be on so many different levels, as an artist, as a platform, as a collector. It's just a learning process. And just this kind of extended bear market is just taught us so much, as it will happen again in the future if we continue in the cyclical nature of our ecosystem.
Those lowest of the low moments, Erick, were those, what was the catalyst for those? Those are hard learnings, but was it a market force that led to that feeling, or something else?
Every category. I mean, it's just like everything that has been good, everything that has been amazing has been accompanied with like a very sobering lesson and a very sobering moment. Like I said, on a personal level, at a company level, as an artist. And I think it's part of it. People say if it was easy, everybody would do it. Like I do think that there's been moments that I regretted all of this, no matter what the upside has been. And then I look back and I think about how many people's lives have been changed for the better. And it's something that kind of happens less and less these days in this market. It's been a little bit tougher, but I have had hundreds of messages from people over the years, artists, collectors, and really sentimental stories as to how art blocks or generative art, or even just like, being within the crypto ecosystem has changed their life for the better. And that will make all of it worth it in the end, no matter what happens.
Well, I'll raise my hand to say that, Erick, the work you and Art Blocks have done have materially impacted my life in a very meaningful, important way. So one more testimonial. Alejandro, coming over to you, one of the things I admire so much about you and Fellowship is your flexibility and open-mindedness to innovate, experiment. That means with artists and bringing new artists into the space. That means with mint mechanics in many respects. You've tried all sorts of things. Talk about, in your role as a co-founder and a curator, how you're maybe sort of perpetually trying to find product market fit in such a rapidly evolving space and with these cycles on the market side. Talk through how you sort of think about innovating and experimenting.
Sure. I'll actually start with echoing what Erick said.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely has felt like these past 4 years have been like, what can you do? Try it, and hopefully those who come after you will learn and actually like build on top of that. I feel that us at Fellowship, we definitely stand on the shoulders of giants. 𝗠𝗿𝗳 has been like a guiding light of things to do. So it's really excited to be here, still be here after 4 years, and continuing to develop projects. And regarding your question, I mean, it all starts with the project. Like, one of the things we've really like paid attention to is, and I think this comes partly from my obsession as an artist. Like, part of what the job of the artist is to have an idea and to find the best way to manifest that idea conceptually, theoretically, materially, and then in distribution. How do you make that circle be part of the art ecosystem? So in that obsessiveness as an artist, I've brought that into Fellowship. And also, I mean, I can't deny my two co-founders, they're also very obsessive in the way that they strategize and see NFTs and collecting. We have a Studio 137 who is a massive collector, and really like he challenges everything in terms of, as a collector, like, am I going to be attracted to this? Is this something that I will understand? And does this add to the experience of this project? Yes or no? And he's very cutthroat in that sense. And then Fred, in his experience as a gallerist, also has a very, very clear understanding of the market and what projects will have broader appeal with the collector base that we're working with. So it's those three things balanced together that I think brings projects that sometimes feel like, how can you bring that to the NFT space? It's impossible. Like what happened with the line draw, it's the combination of these three minds talking to each other and challenging each other that we kind of designed a way to make that project work as an NFT project, always with hand in hand with the artist, of course. And it's sometimes a frustrating thing because we develop some projects and then you have to like pass it on to the artist, and it's like, yes, but I want this, I want that, I want this, and so there's always negotiation and a balancing act in all that.
Yeah, super fascinating. And Erick, I know, you and I have had a number of conversations over the years, and I believe this to be true, what I'm about to say, which is you have quite strong conviction about certain things. We've talked about ordinals at one point, and I think you said, yeah, that could be interesting, but for art blocks, it's not quite right. In that spirit of what you mentioned previously around learning that we're all doing, is there one thing that you've changed your mind about?
Oh man, I feel like I've kind of waffled on a lot of different things, but yeah, I mean, gosh, there's a bunch of things. I don't know where to start. I think one thing that has been interesting for me is kind of understanding this kind of inherent conflict between wanting to be a platform to let anybody release generative art, which was the original idea based on the fact that there was only a handful of artists, and I just didn't even think people would be interested to release and to collect this kind of work, given how niche it was before. This is like the early art blocks, and then would turn into Factory, and then would turn into Presents. and then also being a curator of what I consider to be some of the best generative art in the world, and kind of what that conflict, that kind of the conflict that it created. You don't have, for example, a situation where people fault Manifold or Super Rare for too much, too many mints, too many releases, because those are platforms that are facilitating someone to release work, which was kind of the original idea, like letting an artist that works in the generative medium put work out there. And so I think one of the biggest learnings for me is just understanding that it's really hard to do both, and trying to stick to my values of wanting to be an open platform and let anybody work and release work, and then also recognizing that we've gotten to work with some of the best artists in the world, and the amount of work and love that needs to go into each individual release to make it successful, and to really give those artists the recognition and the place that they deserve. So that's I think one of the biggest learnings and one of the biggest shifts that we've had at Art in this kind of rest period that we've had, is in kind of deciding that we're going to release as Art Blocks significantly less work. And when we do release work, we're going to put a tremendous amount of love and effort and ideas behind every single project, to give that individual project a more custom feel and more relative to what is being built, versus the kind of mass production of art, which is, again, that was the original intention of Art Blocks, to be a platform for people to release. We still have that on the platform side. I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be something that over time will kind of grow. Right now, the market is pretty slow just in general, so it's a little bit harder. But being both is still hard, and that's one of the hardest things in general over the last few years, is trying to find ways to both work with all of my favorite artists at the same time, and also be selective and elevate the ones that have produced the most elevated work.
Yeah, I love that. So well said, Eric. And Alejandro, for you at Fellowship, how do you think about that tension? Of course, there's this one criticism, maybe of both generative and AI-based works. It's like there's this infinite supply, and work can be created very quickly in some respects. How do you think about that tension, both from a sort of platform economics? You need to run a business that's sustainable, of course, but you also want probably to have very tight curation. How do you think about supply demand, both from the platform economic perspective and then the supply demand for the artist perspective as well?
Yeah, it's a complicated thing, and I think we have a great example with Art Blocks. Whatever that whole system and whole ecosystem that Eric and the whole Art Blocks team built, as an example of what happens if you do one thing in one way or another thing in one way. We're such a small team, and we started, let's say, our push in a downturn in the middle of 2022, when things started feeling like that was the end of it, and then the end of that year showed us that it was going to get even worse. So we haven't had the opportunity to do too many experiments, and that kind of pushed us to build a program that is very niche. And I think it's both a manifestation of our capabilities as a team, because we're a very small team, and also what we feel that we can commit to. And all of us want to sleep sound at night and be happy with the stuff that we're putting out there. So I think we've come to a compromise, and to be convinced that being very, very selective with the work that we're supporting and putting out there is the way to work, and the way to work in the long term. Thinking of like what I've done for my own career, it's been a challenge to putting out work all the time, because good ideas don't come every single day. So I also kind of mimic that artistic urge that I have, and I bring that to the curatorial side. And there's not 100 good projects out there all the time. They come and go, and so we try to balance that, and it fits us well because of the size of the team, and honestly, like our expectations of what we want the NFT space to be. And it's not about control; it's about honesty and how can we do our best job. And the way that we've been doing, I think, is a beautiful manifestation of that.
I love it. And something you guys have both mentioned, and then of course, I think your Twitter feeds are representative of this, and your work is the importance of emotional resonance and storytelling for everything that is emanating from our three platforms, and the work that we are all helping facilitate for artists. And you have this notion, I think, Alejandro, of like characterate. Snowfro, Erick, you have this notion of like this mafia that was represented in Venice, I think, coming together in this movement in some respects that I think is super fascinating. Maybe quickly, just before we move on, we'll treat this maybe somewhat like a speed round. Erick, what's your current elevator pitch on digital art?
Well, if we can get past the mafia view, right? When I say mafia, it's that, the outside world looks at us oftentimes as a mafia. And I do think that as I've learned a lot of different cycles, learned through the different cycles, it's really interesting to see how much easier it is to have dialogue with the outside world when we're not in this mode, when we're in the flat mode or even a declining mode. But yeah, I feel like there's this idea that there's a generation of people who are spending more and more of their time online and value their digital possessions more and more. I think it's it's objectively been, as my children are growing, demonstrated that my children would rather have $100 in an in-game store than $100 cash. And I think that where we are headed is towards a world where the next generation, our generation, if we're nerdy enough to be in kind of this space, and then, even like the next few generations that are a little bit more connected to social media, but the dystopian future, I guess, of Ready Player One, that we will spend more and more of our time online and we will value our digital possessions more and more. And I'm having a hard time seeing a world where that doesn't happen. Yes, there will always be the 6-speed car versus the automatic for the enthusiasts, but and we will always value our physical stuff because we are in a physical space. And I put a lot of time into like the connection between the digital and the physical. But I do see a generation of people that are going to come and it will be the status quo for them to have digital possessions. And I think both Alejandro with Fellowship and Art Blocks are creating these digital pieces that I think will be the ones that ushered in this digital art movement in a way that they will be desirable in the future, highly desirable in the future. Or at least we all hope that for the sake of the artists and for the sake of the platforms.
I love it. Okay, just given time, let's move on now to the section of the show where we go into your vaults. The Erick Calderon Snowfro vault, the Alejandro vault. I know there's some gems in there. And so let's go digging in the crates, so to speak. Alejandro, let's start with you. I know you have a robust collection, both on the physical art side and, of course, the digital art NFT side. What piece or what collection, and I don't know yet, did you pull out and you want to share with us?
Sure. Let me bring that up. Here we go. So I brought this piece that I collected from ноуper. He's a young artist from Florida. And I chose him for several reasons. One, again, I project myself. I love the idea of the city, the idea of urban planning, the idea of architecture, and how it shapes the way that we think of our lives and ourselves. So any artwork that deals in some way with architecture, I'm always attracted to. And then another layer to why I chose this piece is I started working with ноуper last year, and it's been a wild ride to see how somebody is developing their voice. And as a curator and the way that we run the daily program, I have like at least one or twice a week, I get in contact with the artist. I see updates, we converse, I give them critical feedback. And, that opportunity of seeing somebody doubting themselves, then having breakthroughs with their art is something that is absolutely mind-blowing. I always wanted that for me as an artist, that I could have that confidant that I can share work with and, and have a feedback that is nurturing and protecting for me to develop. And so I try to build, that's part of what I try to build as a curator. And this particular piece was 𝗠ঁ𝗿𝗳's moment when he was transitioning from doing like these quirky GIFs. We call them trap JPEGs that he was doing early 2023. And he suddenly kind of got a hold of these different tools, these AI video tools, and he started experimenting with that. And this particular piece also reminds me of my skateboarding days, where I could, go around the city looking at it, screwing up with the city, breaking stuff. And this piece is called Breaking Shit. And it talks about 𝗠ঁ𝗿𝗳's relationship with the city of Atlanta and how he had this fallout because of taxes, and he was like trying to pay back all the money that the city had taken from him. And so he went around the city graffitiing all over the place. And he talks about how, those graffitis are still there if you go to Atlanta. He's like, I'm gonna, instead of making, thinking of graffiti, of making it like a beautifying the city. No, he's screwing things up for the city, for everybody in there. So I love that, that antagonist feeling that it has, and that it was a technical and conceptual breakthrough. It's all that you can ask for a good work of art. And so I cherish this piece a lot.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I've been following 𝗠ঁ𝗿𝗳 just a little bit, but had none of that context that you just provided about his process, his background, his upbringing. It really imbues that work with this whole new lens that is so well communicated, Alejandro. Okay, Erick, that's a tough act to follow. What do you have?
Oh man. Okay. So yeah, this is a lot. This is a very different kind of thing from my vault. Obviously, I've got way too many art blocks pieces to be able to pick one that I really appreciate. I love them all so much. But I think, people may have heard me say this, but I do think that a way to have a sustainable economy within what we're doing is to get people from the outside to come in and appreciate what we're doing. It's unsustainable otherwise. Like people, we're all fatigued as collectors, no matter which way you look at it. And I think, it's important to kind of designate between what's happening on the outside and what it takes to get people to come in. And then also think about our current ecosystem. And, we have everybody from the patrons to the flippers, and understanding that every single one of them plays a part into why we're here today. This piece is so important to me. This is one of my favorite artworks. I've brought it up in the past. It's by an artist named Stina Jones, which I've now known, at this point for like 5 or 6 years, as following within the ecosystem. It's called 𝗠ป์𝗿𝗳. It was during a really rough time in the last kind of down cycle. And she, I think, sensed it and tweeted it out and said, look, I have a gift for you. Just post your address. And so she minted 300 of these pieces. Obviously, I love colorful kind of, gradients and rainbows and hearts. And so it really resonated with me. But this piece, to me, represents exactly where we were at the last cycle, feels exactly like where we are today. And so I think it's extremely relevant and important in understanding both that in the last cycle, what brought so much magic was newcomers coming in. But those newcomers had to come in and be drawn in by the people that were here. And the people that were here were having a bad day. Oftentimes it was like the middle of the royalty debate, like the original royalty debates, and like the artists kind of coming like and putting their foot down and saying, hey, this is important. This is an opportunity for us to change the future and change the way that artists like operate. And, what they came into in that next kind of cycle was what, in my mind, was set, like the stage that was set by Stina in kindness, in demonstrating the joy, the delight, the curiosity of being in this ecosystem. And to me, even though this piece was free, and I then went around and people were like selling these pieces for like 0.0001 ETH after that, because a lot of people, it's like, oh, free stuff, free money, whatever. I was just kind of like hogging them up and collecting them up. But I think there's a cyclical nature to our ecosystem, and it's things like this that I think open up the doors to other people, to new people coming in. And the new people that are coming in are the ones that are going to validate, not necessarily the flippers and the speculators, although they have a place here, but the people that came in to early art blocks, let's say an early NFT ecosystem, and are still here, are going to be validated by the next generation of people that come in. And it's acts of kindness like this that I think kind of create the joy of our ecosystem and the reason why I'm so happy to be here, and understanding that, you know, there was a lot of who I was before art blocks existed, and this represents that time period. And I think we're kind of at that point of the cycle again, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, beautiful. Such a good share, Eric. I thought you might share with us the alien punk that you bought this week, but
I wish that was as close as I would ever get. I don't know what the final price was, but that might have been the closest I could have ever been to having a whole alien. Damn it.
I had someone ask me yesterday, do you think Eric bought that? No, but such a great share. Both. I mean, it's such diverse shares from your respective vaults. Couldn't be any different in some respects, although the aesthetic, there was some color sharing across the two, for sure. This has been such an honor and such a fun show to have you both on. I don't think the three of us have ever been in person together, so we'll have to fix that before too long, I hope. But Eric, Alejandro, great to have you on. Hope to have you back in the future, and appreciate everything you're both doing for this space, for artists, for collectors. Let's just keep it going. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.